Some folks ask, how deep could you dig these swales in your environment for a market garden? Well, that's a good question, because you can really dig them as deep as you want, as long as you have the resources or the time to put it in. And actually, as you scale this type of thing, you can dig them even deeper. So let's say the slope that I'm on right now, you want to make sure that, so the steeper the slope, the wider you want your terraces, yet the less width you can get, because you need to maintain at least a 1-to-1 slope. So if you go up 1 foot, the foot of your mound on this lower end needs to come out 1 foot. So rise over run is 1-to-1. But if you go up higher than 4 foot, then 1/1 is difficult to manage. Plus, you can't lean across it to grow a market garden. So it starts to become kind of a foot on a hill. And below that, you need to have a road, because that's where you've excavated. But for every foot you go up on one of these mounds, you got to go back at least 2 feet. So if I dug a trench that's 2 feet deep, I need to have above slope a terrace that's 4 foot wide. So if our garden bed is a double reach bed, 36 inches to 4 foot wide, and we're being a little bit flexible in how we reach into that bed, maybe we got trees in the middle, then our paths can only be 2 foot deep. Now, does your slope support that? Now, if you're on a steep slope, you might be actually 4 foot deep, even though you excavate only 2 foot of dirt. So you have a different setup. So you have to mind a little bit of physics, and you have to monitor some ideal conditions. Now, the ideal condition to reduce erosion is a 1-to-3 slope for 1 foot of rise. You've got 3 foot of run. And if your overall beds, this is kind of a 1-to-3, that path down the middle is kind of a 1-to-3. If your overall is 1-to-3, then you're going to spread out your beds, and probably only going to have about a foot deep path, even though your terraces could be 6 feet wide. So it could be 2 foot for the path, 4 foot for the bed itself, and then down here a foot. And so now you're not really going that far into the ground. Now each year you're going to dig these paths out a little bit more. So you might want to leave some soil in there so you can dig out over the years. And then again, if you're doing this by hand, you might only want to go as far as your tiller will cut. Now eventually, we might decide, okay, well, the way the water's going, we want to have some big wide 12-foot terraces. We want a good solid wide strip, vegetative strip with trees on it, okay, because we're starting to move towards a silvopasture method. And therefore, we may actually bring in an excavator and bisect the hill. So we got a hill like this. This is about 2 acres in this little section here. We might go down the middle, and that's actually what was here before, is he dug giant trenches, about 4 foot deep trenches, filled them with logs, and those became soakage trenches to kind of get our stability started on this hill. Now you might actually dig 2 foot deep trenches, bring that soil upslope to build a 4 foot tall mound that we're going to terrace over the top. So again, your design depends on your application and your environment. This system here, we have a gate on this side, and then there's actually a level path through here that was excavated, and it goes around to a gate on the other side. Believe it or not, both those gates are about the same. One's slightly higher than the other, but they're about the same elevation, so that the path between the two is only a slight slope. We don't want to hold water on a path that you're going to drive a tractor across, but it's kind of maybe a 4%, 2% grade from one gate to the other, so that water runs smoothly across the property to the other area. But overall, we're not taking on a bunch of water from outside the garden space. You want to be mindful where your garden's moving. But when that was excavated, that soil was put upslope. It gave that kind of shell shape to the top here. And of course, there's a gate down on the bottom here, and there's a gate on the top. And I'm kind of making a kind of a slight slope, a 1-to-3, a 1-to-4 slope, all the way down the hill as the walking path between the gates. We do this for access, but we also do it to make sure that we don't have water running. You can see how this path here, we got it covered in plastic right now, but it has a deeper section over there. Well, that had to be excavated a little bit to bring the soil up top here. So that bed over there is going to be a little bit different than the bed that's over on this other side that didn't have as much excavation in it. And so our paths become access points, but we may still have these step downs. So this path on this side might be 1.5 feet deep, and this path on this side might be only 6 inches deep. See, every path can be unique. The paths at the top of the slope are actually at a higher elevation than the paths at the bottom of the slope. This is fine. We're spreading the water out. We're soaking the water in. And from time to time, we're going to have a water lens where the water has soaked through and popped back out of a path. And we just make an adjustment. We add more materials, add our bulk materials, our carbons. The key importance, though, is that your paths are level, and that as you mound up your beds, you put a cover crop on them, you cover them with straw. Okay, now this path right here is kind of wide. And I could bust my balls and break my back digging this hill out and making this perfect width all the way down. But instead, I just simply scraped out the path, threw the soil up the hill. You always throw your soil uphill. And I just worked the longest distance first, because I want a lot of volume available in the path for water right now, because we're in the beginning of the season. I need whatever I got on the bed at the top. Now, if it turns out that reaching in from the top and reaching in from the bottom, we can't put vegetables all the way to the middle of the bed, it's okay. It's not gonna hurt anybody's feelings. We can always shave a little bit off next year as we get the bed shaped out. But these are very organic paths in this system. We're growing food in them right now in the cover crop. I've got a greens mix in here, as well as the rye and pea and everything else. And I got sun hemp in this down here, a little bit lower. Now you have to be mindful that your nutrients are going to leach from the top to the bottom. So there are times that you may want to dig out a path at the bottom. So maybe it's down here. Maybe this section here has leached enough water that we've got, this is a nitrogen buildup, nutrient buildup in this particular path. It was a wider than average path, so we were actually dumping large amounts of crop residual and spoiled straw, and then we even just brought wheelbarrows in of manure and dumped it on top of here. See, this is what you can do with these paths. Some paths are wider than others. You could actually start dumping waste and your organic material into the path, turn it in the path, and then wheelbarrow it to wherever you need it to go. So let's say we had a high density nutrient down here, and we are probably going to have trees along this road here. It's the access point. But let's just say we had a high nutrient here. We've been throwing leaves here. We've been throwing straw, rabbit, and chicken waste, and it's turned over, and we're going to then carry it up the hill as compost and top dress all the beds. But we dumped it down here because we didn't want to contaminate the plants up top, because maybe that's a spring compost pile. So at the end of that, we just scrape the path out level. We don't try to excavate. We're not excavators. You can bring in a piece of equipment if you really have to excavate. But let's say we now at fall, and we actually have a bed up top that's a little wide and got crop residue in it, and we started bringing in nutrients, and now those nutrients are leaching downhill through these paths. Then we want carbon downhill, and we want our nutrients uphill. But again, the depth of the path is variable. The depth of what's most important about each path is that it's a level and that it's on contour. Because when you do get the water in here, we want that water to spread out and soak into the ground. We want the bottom of our permanent raised beds or our terrace areas to be strong and secure, so we don't dig into them all the time. So it's better if you have, if this slope is slightly stable, I'm just going to scrape around it. I'm not going to try to dig into it. Now next year I might change that. I might dig into it a little bit more as we shape and adjust, but I'm going to have more roots in it, so it's not going to be as hard pack to worry about. So I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. I'm just going over some of the techniques here. You can dig these as deep as you want. You can dig trenches to your chest if you want it to. But again, you want it structurally sound. You want it to do the job of spreading and soaking the nutrients. And you ultimately want it to be level so that it's easy for access and utility use that we've described. Visit me at www.prosperityhomestead.org to ask your questions. Thanks for watching. I'm Justin Hitt.